Hey, what's up? It's Oren Harris, transformational leader and high performance coach, here with another video on the secrets to high performance. Now, I use the word secret very lightly and somewhat playfully because this information is not really a secret. No information is really secret, but it seems secret, one, because in some cases it's uncommon knowledge, but two, is that even if we know these things, quote unquote, know, there is this infinite depth to our capacity and ability to embody a certain idea. So there's always a next level. So this really is about mastery. That being said, I spoke with you on a previous video about the power of presence. Being in the present moment, and that there is depths to the experience of presence. Your presence is your bandwidth. Essentially, it's your consciousness, it's your awareness, and the more you expand that capacity, you naturally have an ability to perform at a much higher level and to access your infinite power that you are accessing when you are in these flow states, or some people call the zone. So on this video, I want to share with you something that might be, well, it might be a paradigm shift for you. And it has to do with one of the #1 areas in our life that actually steals from our presence or consumes life force, bandwidth, attention. These are all saying the same thing, and it is stress. Collectively, in the last several years and even today, it's a very popular notion to manage stress. Obviously, if you have stress running in your body and your mind, to the degree that you have that, it's actually stealing from your presence, from your life force, from your power, and inevitably has you performing at a lower level. You're not as efficient, you're not as productive, you're not as fulfilled. So stress, I don't need to educate you on stress. But what I do want to illuminate and share with you is that our understanding of stress has developed stress management. Stress management is a huge industry. Obviously so, because if you're able to manage stress, you are going to be able to perform at a higher level. But the paradigm shift, and what I've discovered in my own evolution and path, and something that I now teach and I coach people on, is this really essential distinction. And it's going from stress management to transforming stress. From stress management to transforming stress. Stress management is an upgrade and a level up from having a ton of stress and doing nothing about it. So if you're able to maneuver and manipulate and manage your stress through things like, for example, maybe breathing techniques, meditation, there's all kinds of devices, techniques, tools, mantras, things that you can do to manage stress. Transforming stress, on the other hand, the more you transform stress, the more you create space, the same way you create space when you manage stress, except where you create space in a more sustainable, long-lasting way, and it's actually much more stable because you're no longer managing the stress. So each thread, each layer of stress that you transform, that stress, which is really a compacted energy, it's like the life force energy is, it's like a garden hose that's flowing water through it, and you make these little kinks in it, doesn't flow as optimally. Therefore, you have less space, and that energy compresses, and so it's stress. So stress is like resistance. So each layer of stress that you transform, you get that energy back, and your space expands, and now you can focus it and direct it through your game and perform at a very high level in a more sustained way because you've transformed that layer of stress, which really starts to reveal what stress actually is and what the primary cause of stress is. So one of the primary causes of stress is that you have defined yourself. We've defined ourselves in a way that's out of alignment with truth, out of alignment with our true self. A very simple example is if in a moment in time, let's say you're having a sales meeting, and you are talking to a prospect and you say something, and at some point he or she looks at you and rejects you in some way, or appears to reject you in some way, and that triggers an emotional response, because who likes being rejected, but it triggers deep subconscious emotional, it's a deep subconscious emotional trigger, let's say. And so in having that negative experience, we then redefine ourselves or change our behavior in such a way that maybe we don't get that response again. And this isn't one moment in time, but if we make a new decision and redefine ourselves and say, I'm going to be different, I'm going to create a different self that doesn't get rejected, we could carry that on for 15 years. Now, every time we're about to go into a sales situation, or maybe not every time, but when we're about to go into a sales situation in the future, this is now occurring in our subconscious. Our body triggers and activates a stress response. So maybe we start feeling anxious, and we come to think that anxiousness is just normal or a normal part of who we are. Now it's a part of our self-definition. And so obviously managing that, doing some sort of technique or tool or something like that before you go into your sales meeting is going to be much better than being a hot mess. But if you reverse back 15 years to that one moment in time, and let's say you go back and talk to that same person and you get down to the truth, and let's say that his perception of what he meant, whatever it was that he said to you that you felt rejected, what if it was the exact opposite? And then you have a moment of truth. Suddenly you see through the illusion of your perception that got created in that moment in time, and you see the truth. Maybe the guy actually was trying to say you were amazing. Or even if he intentionally meant to reject you, if you go back to truth, that moment gets eliminated, you've transformed the stress. So transforming stress really is about taking these aspects of who we've defined ourselves to be that are out of alignment with our true self and transforming the situation by bringing truth to it, by bringing acceptance and love to it, by bringing forgiveness to it. Because to the degree that you do that in all these different potential areas of your life that could have, it's like they're moments suspended in time and space, operating in the background of your consciousness that you have resistance to, avoidance to, judgment to. Each time you take some of this trapped energy and bring it back into, you dissolve it back into your consciousness, you actually expand your space and you transform stress. So stress is not natural. It might be the norm, it might be normal, but it's not natural. And I'm not saying do not ever manage your stress. What I'm saying is do not rely on only managing your stress, because you'll have to keep managing it to some degree. And the use of management of stress is a use of your own power. So your power is being occupied to manage stress. And when you transform stress, you get that power back and you have more bandwidth, you have more presence, and you're no longer stressful. So I just packed a lot into this one idea, but you can take this idea and start to look at all the areas of your life that somehow your relationship with this person or this thing or this situation is creating stress because you've defined yourself. You're looking at the situation in a way that's not true. I'll give another example. I have a client of mine who owns a law firm, and he was looking to merge with another law firm, and it was an amazing opportunity. And before the meeting, he called me, and he was feeling stressed out. He was feeling anxiousness. He had knots in his stomach. Now, on one hand, okay, if you have a big game, a certain amount of that could be normal and not that detrimental, okay? So I'm not saying it has to be eliminated, but he was really stressing out. And so the natural inclination, if you pull out your stress management toolkit, is I'm going to deal with this. You already know you're off if you're dealing with it. Dealing with it is better than not dealing with it. But he calls me up and, runs the situation by me, tells me his intention, and he's really excited about this opportunity, but he's feeling nervous, he's feeling anxious. And instead of dealing with his stress, I helped him go from his head back to his heart, because the head, our mind, which is where our self-definition is, is where we're perceiving reality rather than seeing truth, is the creator of stress. That's the moral of the story. I helped him drop back into his heart, and I asked him a couple simple questions. One of them was, why did you want to merge with this company in the first place? He got back into his heart. He saw the value the holistic value, the value he was bringing to them, and the value he felt like he was going to receive, and the power of this partnership. Now, obviously, he knew that, but it was deep down in his heart, and he wasn't connected to his heart. He was connected to his head, which had him in a state of, somewhat in a state of neediness, which he was completely unaware of, in a state of lack. And so he's like, wow, I'm going to make 10x the income. I'm going to have this great, like, this is what I'm going to get. This is what I'm going to get. And on some level, on an unconscious level, he was putting the company and the idea of the merger, he's putting the company, putting these people on a pedestal and minimizing himself relative to them, which creates stress. Why? Because it's not true. The truth is we're all equal. We have different paths, different skill sets, different things that we may be more advanced, less advanced, but fundamentally we're all equal. And in the heart, we know that. And so he really did authentically, truthfully have something to offer and to bring to the table. So even though it was different than their contribution, we just equalized that by him getting back into his heart, suddenly remembering that, oh yeah, this actually really is an amazing idea. And I said he put them on the pedestal, but included on the pedestal was money, right? And anytime we put power into money, not to say that money is not amazing, but when we put power into money or into the big deal or into the merger, that power is your own life force, which means you're separating yourself from it, which is a state of lack, and lack doesn't exist. That creates stress. And what it creates, or what created in this situation, was he, without knowing it, has to create a false self, somewhat of a false self, to try to compensate for this perceived gap between him and them. Which I said your posture, your energy feels like, pick me, pick me. I'm interviewing them. Wow, this is an amazing opportunity, but you're forgetting the other part of the equation. Once he remembered that, got back in his heart where the authentic resonance was, where equality exists, it's like two amazing people merged together. What can we create? His anxiety went away immediately. The knots in his stomach, boom, went away, and guess what? He was present, and he came in with power and clarity. And now he's magnetic and abundant and powerful. Huge distinction. So when you have stress, one of the ways that you can transform stress is drop back into your heart, see what the truth is, and realign with the truth. Drop the false self, which is trying to compensate, get back into that state of abundance, back into your power, and then you can meet life, meet people, meet with the opportunity in such a way that you have an appreciation for whatever the opportunity is, but you're not in this perception that it's actually separate from you, that it's actually more important, that you actually need it. So that was a lot to pack into one video. Much more I could say about that on the intricacies of transforming stress. And even really being aware, that's another key to this, is self-awareness. Aware of all the places in your life where you're not fully being your true self. Because when you're being your true self and you are allowing that, and you are essentially, when you're allowing your true self, you're really getting close to your natural state, which is love. You're just being yourself. It's effortless. It doesn't actually take any energy. And then you're doing, saying, acting out, expressing, you're just doing whatever you're doing. So you're not expressing, you're not using unnecessary energy in the form of stress, or energy that is compressed, and that's these different emotions, whether it is anxiety, or even boredom, or frustration, or anger. These are all different levels of stress, and they can all be transformed. You don't have to just deal with them because they are deviations away from the truth. Get back to the truth, which might require courage, it might require vulnerability sometimes, but when you get back to the truth and you surrender to that, you start to transform stress, you transform the story of who you are, and get into the presence of who you really are, and that's where your power is. All right, Oren Harris signing off. I'll see you in the next video. Peace.